The Christian Association for Survivors of Suicide Loss is pleased to present our podcast, Reaching for Hope with Joy Osborne. Let's join Joy and her guests as they discuss topics of relevance for emotional and spiritual wellness.
Welcome to our podcast today. We're going to be addressing challenging topics through the lens of God's Word. Today we're going to be taking on a crucial and often silent issue called domestic violence. So today I have Beth and I have Heather with me, so I'm glad you ladies are joining today to talk about this crucial topic that I know a lot of people maybe have not heard about, or maybe they're experiencing it. So I'm glad you're here to talk through this.
Thank you for having us, Joy.
Morning.
So I wanted to first start out with maybe defining what is domestic violence, because I think for me, when I started looking into this, I didn't know the realm of it, what it actually included. So domestic violence is like a pattern of abusive behavior in any relationship that is used by one person to gain or maintain power and control over another intimate partner. Now, what I found interesting, because I used to think that domestic violence was all physical.
Sure.
Yeah.
But there's more things involved in domestic violence: emotional and verbal abuse, physical abuse, economic and financial abuse, technology facilitated abuse, and sexual abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that interesting that it's all inclusive? So if somebody's going through these type of things, they don't realize, oh, I'm actually living through domestic violence. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our experiences, because I find that when we share our own experience, it's more personal. People can possibly relate to that better than just reading a book or a page or talking to a doctor, right? When you have some women, now it is men as well. There's a lot of men who go through this, but today we're talking, as women, but also including men. So I wanted to start out first with, can you share, either of you, your experience with domestic violence and how it began?
For me, it was my first marriage. I got married in my 20s. I got pregnant with my daughter unexpectedly, and I didn't really know the person I was marrying. I thought, well, it's just what you're supposed to do. Do the right thing, get married, knowing then what I know now.
Yeah.
It started out abusive. He was an alcoholic. He had addiction issues, and right away there was no being an equal. He said, I wished I knew then what I know now. I felt trapped because I was pregnant. I actually was more the breadwinner, but I did the things that you do when you get married. You add your spouse to your bank account. It soon became financially uneven.
Yeah.
I couldn't feed my daughter. He would take my car keys.
Goodness.
Just feeling trapped.
Yeah.
I remember feeling very trapped, and then from there, it just, your self-esteem, you break.
Yeah. It's very sad.
Yeah, you change. It's not just a physical thing. It becomes a mindset.
Yeah.
You easily doubt your self-worth.
It's a tough place, it sounds like you were in.
Yeah, you don't realize where you're going. You don't realize how fast your mental spiral happens.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you reach out to anybody during that time, or
No.
did you keep it to yourself?
No, because you blame yourself.
Yeah.
You become your own worst enemy because you blame yourself. You should know better. You tell yourself the things that my family doesn't need to know this. It's only going to make it worse for.
Yeah.
You turn inward, and again you kind of give that person the power because you turn inward.
Yeah.
It spiraled. It became mentally abusive, physically abusive. And then, I thought about my daughter. I felt fear for her.
So did you know of any places to go, or at that time, or you just stayed in that relationship?
I stayed in that relationship for a good while. I had asked him to leave. We had been at a friend's house at a gathering, and he wasn't supposed to drive, so I was going to drive. He insisted that he drive. I wouldn't give him the keys to my Camaro. I don't know if you guys remember back in the day when the club was the security for your car. I was an old T-top Camaro, so I had put the club on the steering so nobody could steal it.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't give him the keys to the club.
Right.
Because he shouldn't have been driving.
Yeah.
Well, I buckled my daughter in the car seat and said, I'll drive. And the argument ensued. And he takes her out of the seat and decides that he's going to just go down the street with her.
Oh.
Mm.
That's when my panic began.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
Yeah, you just, you don't know the person you become when your children are involved.
Yeah.
I'm playing with mama bear, as they say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to get my daughter away, and I finally get her in my arms, and he's grabbing my arm and twisted, and I'm trying to get her and the keys. And thank God for people.
Mm-hmm.
They've seen what was going on. They called the police. Yeah. They discussed the situation, and they take him to jail.
Right.
That's where my God intervened, call it divine intervention. It's like the light bulb comes on for me. Here's my opportunity.
Yeah.
So that's when I start my processes of separation and just putting my life back together.
That's good.
Has something, God does it in his way.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the way I think it should be,
Yeah.
but his way. And, finally I start getting my life back together.
That's
but
great.
had I known then what I know now, to see all the signs, to
Yeah.
feel all the insecurities of my self-worth,
Yeah.
my financial stability. And I had a good job at the time. I had stability in my job. I had worked for the same company 28 years. So, it wasn't like I wasn't stable or in my mind.
Right.
Yeah.
But you hear the things over and over again that nobody's going to want you. Nobody.
Yeah.
The lies of the end.
Yeah. You hear
Heard
those
that.
things, and then you can't take care of things, and you start just the doubt.
Yeah.
I think the enemy wants us to doubt ourselves.
Absolutely.
It starts out small.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then it becomes so big
Right.
that you're overwhelmed by it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the attributes of the enemy, as we know, are steal, kill, and destroy, and cause chaos. I would add that to it as well.
Yeah.
And if we're living in that, especially the lies, like you were saying, the enemy wants us to think that we're not worth what, God says you're a masterpiece, right? And when we're in those situations, the enemy just seems like just bombards us with this negative, I'll never have any better, I deserve this, whatever it might be going through our minds. And I always say this, even in our little small groups that we have, that, if you ever hear anything negative coming into your mind, God doesn't talk to us like that.
Yeah.
That's not God.
Mm.
That's the enemy trying to suppress us. So I'm glad you were able to move out of that abusive relationship.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
that's good.
Give it all to God, because I couldn't have done it by myself.
No.
I know that now.
That's good.
We think back that you're not a victim. I mean, you at the time you feel like it, but you really have overcome, and that's my mindset. You've overcome.
As you've gotten out of it.
Yeah, I can now tell somebody I know where I've been and I know where I'm going.
Right. That's good. That's really good.
And I just kind of have to use that as my testimony. And I know if what I've been through is going to help somebody else, then maybe I'm meant to tell my story.
Right. The voice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's good.
It is good. Thank you for sharing that. It's tough.
It is to relive that, and to know that you've come through and how far you've come. I love that.
And I want you to know that as you were speaking, it was affecting me because many things that you said, I went through the exact same thing. So it just goes to show that I may not have gone through exactly what you went through, but many of the things that you said affected me and what I went through, and even your story is giving me hope. So I appreciate you and taking you're so brave. Thank you.
Thank you. No, if we're not brave in who we are as women, then how are we going to help somebody else? How can we? And I think we're meant to do that for one another. We're meant to we're meant to help.
Absolutely.
Put us here for a reason.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, and I wanted to just comment a little bit on that. Some of the things you said. For me, I had an abusive first marriage as well, in that he was addicted to opiates, and he had chronic pain, and he had bipolar and physical. He had all sorts of problems. For me, it was, as a Christian, I don't know if you both have experienced this, but I felt that, when I grew up in a family that was a lot of divorces. My mom was divorced many times.
Yeah,
Wow.
too.
And I was determined, I'm not going to have that. I'm not going to live like that. And I want to have this happy marriage and all. And then when I got married and I didn't know it, see, that's the thing about some people, when you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. For me, it started out as a financial. Remember, I said in the beginning, part of abuse is financial, all the stealing,
Yeah.
the pawning,
Right.
the bad checks when checks were written.
Yeah.
And then to wake up one day and realize, oh my goodness, I have a problem. And it wasn't that I was avoiding it. I really was ignorant to what was going on. I was putting up with the verbal abuse. I was putting up with the situations that are going on, because in my mind as a Christian, I'm supposed to be a good wife. I'm supposed to stay with my spouse,
Yeah.
and it got to be bad. I can laugh at it now. It's not funny for those who are going through it. But right now, just looking back at what I went through, knowing that God was truly looking out for me. Now, at the time, it may not have felt like it. I remember crying out many times, Lord, when will this end?
Mhm.
Lord,
Oh, yeah.
where are you?
Absolutely.
God, what is it that, what am I to do? And I kept it to myself for the longest time.
Yeah.
I didn't share it with anybody because I felt like in the Bible, there's a story in the Bible of Noah when he was drunk. And one of his sons came in and saw him naked, and he went and told his other brothers, and the other brothers were appalled by it. And so they stepped in. I don't know if you know this story, backwards to cover him.
Yeah.
And it made me think that I didn't want to expose my spouse's sin to anybody.
Yeah. That kind of resonates, because we chose our spouse.
Yeah.
And then you don't want anybody else to go, well, he's a bad picker.
Yeah.
To put it that way, my girlfriends and I joke about it, and a couple of them go, yeah, I'm not a good picker.
Oh.
But you just don't want anybody to poke the bear, poke at your spouse, make it worse.
Yeah, you want to protect them.
Or
in
you
so
want to
many
protect
ways,
them because
even though they're
you're the
hurting.
one that loves them.
Yeah.
And, you want everybody else to love them too.
Yeah. The thing that we have to be careful in this too, that I found, is some people were telling me that I was enabling him. And I'm like, we have to be very careful when we throw words out to people when we're trying to help them, right?
Yeah.
It's got to be, what is God saying? I always go back to that. And if we can't really hear God because we're in that traumatic thing, that's when you need to consult somebody.
Yeah.
Like for me, I felt like I was at a place where God, I really feel like for me, it was saying it's okay to share with so many close friends, just close friends that I knew that could pray. And one of my sisters I shared with, and every time I'd have a moment, please pray, I'd call and say, please pray for me. Tell me, show me, Lord, help them, God, to give me the words or tell me what to do. And there's many times I had to leave for a little while. I had to separate, not legally, but I separated myself for safety and in hopes that he would change, because I was the type, I don't know if any of you were this way, when you got married, you're like, I can change him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lie. You can't change anybody. So if anybody's listening and they think they want to marry somebody in hopes that they can change them, I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to happen.
No.
It's not what God wants, because only God can change them, and they have to be willing to change.
Oh, yeah.
And so don't go down that path that I went down, because it was disastrous. Now, I don't want to totally throw my first husband under the bus. He had good qualities. On good days, he was good. On these other days, he wasn't so good. He had his own struggles, right? But it doesn't excuse the abuse.
Right.
Living in an abusive relationship is not healthy, and it's not what God wants for us. It's something that, God wants us to live in harmony. But I pray that those who are listening, if you're in an abuse, domestic violence, any kind of abuse, please seek help. You are valuable. You're worth it.
Yeah.
You really are. And one stat I want to bring up, I heard years ago, and I believe it's still the same, is that women will not leave their spouses until the 7th time they are abused. I don't know what that number, why 7?
Yeah.
But that's the stats, and that's very sad. So, because I think what happens sometimes, I know I kept going back because I thought, well, he's good. He's a good guy. You know, I think we're going to work things out, you know, but it wasn't healthy, and I didn't get enough help and they didn't get enough help because it's not just us getting help, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
It's also them. We have to be in a safe space because the number one thing that the majority of women want is to feel safe.
Yeah.
And if you're not safe in your space,
Yeah.
you know, we had a podcast called Boundaries on that too, but about that very thing about having safe boundaries. But we've got to look out for ourselves.
Yeah.
Just because we're Christians doesn't mean we're not going to go through things, that we're not going to have difficulty. It's what we do in that difficulty. And there are a lot of people that are willing to help, churches, organizations, community agencies to help, especially with children. There's also safe houses. So there are things for people checking in their community. Churches will also have the resources that you could possibly go to. So I just want to make sure I put that out there that, yes, we lived through this. Heather, I'd love to hear your story as well if you'd like to share.
Well, and I also wanted to say, when you mentioned the part about there's sometimes it was good and sometimes it was bad, that is part of the abuse cycle.
You're right.
And that is one of the reasons why men and women will stay, is because when it is bad, it's bad. And then you do have something that is great. And that's your glimmer of hope.
Right.
And you grab it and you hold on to it.
Right.
And you're like, okay, we can get through this and we can do this.
Oh, you think, oh, it's getting better. Oh, it's going to change. You just you're grasping it. Like
You're grasping at straws.
You're grasping at straws. You're grasping at the light because you want it so bad.
You want it so bad because everything was so bad.
Yeah.
And then when you just get that little bit of goodness, you're like, okay.
And you see that in your person because that's the reason you got with them in the first place.
Right.
Because you saw the goodness in them. You saw all of those qualities. You know, it doesn't start out bad. It just happens a little bit at a time. The first argument, then the second, the third. And the things that you argue over, and then the arguments just escalate, or the addiction escalates. Yeah. Part of my situation, I was an enabler.
Yeah.
I enabled his behavior. Oh, I'm just going to have one drink. Well, one was too many and 1,000 wasn't enough for him. And it, was alcoholism, drugs. It was the whole gambit. And I said, you wish you knew then what you know now.
Right. And that's why we're hoping people are listening, because they're really listening. Because we, as you're young and you're in love and you think, I'm a Hallmark girl, so I always want happily ever afters. But you got to make sure it's the right one. For me, I can honestly say I was a Christian, but I didn't seek God in my marriage and who I married.
Right.
It was wrong. I thought, well, I got this. This will be good. I'll change him. Remember, we were just talking about that. So he's got a nice family. I want love, not the right reasons. Yeah, loving somebody, yes, but having the right counsel, the right input is not a bad thing. Because, 20-year-olds and teens, they think they know everything anyway, right?
Sure.
We got this. We're going to overcome. We're not going to be like them, but life happens and people are people.
Yeah.
And it's what we do in those situations by realizing that we're not super women, right? Yeah. We're women of God, but we have our own things that we have to work through, and that we don't know everything. And that's why we have people, the Bible says the older women should teach the younger, and there's many reasons for that.
Yeah, so much wisdom.
Yeah, they can see it. They've lived it. Like you, Beth, saying, now know certain things to be able to, we see the warning signs.
Yes.
We see what are the risk factors and stuff here. We live these things, right? So I just wanted to throw that out there too. So
yeah, because it starts so innocently.
Yeah.
Marriage is supposed to be, we unite, like you said, we become one with our spouse. The son shall leave his family and the daughter, and just like it. And we have, like I said, the Hallmark. That's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And when it doesn't happen that way, there's a shame.
And there's, just to be clear, the Hallmark's not reality. I have to admit that. not everything's perfect because we're not perfect people. We're broken people.
Yeah.
And broken people have to learn how to live with broken people.
Yeah.
And the best thing we can do is seek God, seek wise counsel, seek others, knowing that we need each other. That's why God created more than one, right?
Yeah.
It's that idea, it really is. We've all been told what it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not reality.
Right.
And, when you're in your own reality and it's different and it's abusive, you just don't know how to get out of it at the time.
Yeah.
You don't. Yeah. And you're ashamed. You don't think God loves you. Why would he let me go through this?
Yeah. Everybody wants heaven on earth. It's like I said, that Hallmark thing doesn't work. We blame God for our, I'm not saying we did this or anybody, but sometimes, God, why aren't you changing him? I don't know if you ever heard yourself say that.
Yeah.
I did. And then the reality is, once again, like we just said earlier, we can't change anybody. Everybody has a free will. God, no doubt, is trying to get their attention, trying to get them to the place of change.
Yeah.
But we can't force change. We can be an example of Christ, but we also have to be, like I said earlier, safe.
Yeah. So, my story. Here we are.
I'd love to hear your story.
Yeah, geez, this was a tough one, Joy.
Yeah.
This was really tough for me. Just, we're great at tucking things in the back of our mind.
Right. I've heard we do that because we're trying to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
And not being able to deal with the pain of it at that time.
Yeah. And it helps us manage, helps us get through life.
Right.
Helps us, if something does come up, we're like, okay, that's here now. And I'm going to deal with it how I deal with it. But I do appreciate you asking me to share my story because as hard as it is, I know that there's a lot of women that need to hear it.
Absolutely.
So I was brought up in a Christian home. My parents have been married for over 50 years.
Oh, wow.
Great life. In fact, I remember being in high school and somebody saying, share your story. And I'm like, what do I share? I've had a great life, So my abuse did not start till my first marriage. I was in my 20s, 24, 25 years old. And I was swept off my feet. Knight in shining armor.
There you go.
We were taken to the nicest restaurants. We ordered steak and lobster, champagne. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? Money's not an object. Let's go to the Ritz-Carlton. Let's watch the fireworks from the rooftop. I was wined and dined, and I loved every minute of it. I was just, I would call an infatuated love.
Wow.
And I was soaking it up like a sponge. And he was a blind date. So we had never met. And I just was on a whim, like, sure, I'll do it, and it turned out great. About 3 months later, he proposed.
Oh, wow.
You talk about quick. Like I said, everything was just falling into place. Everything was perfect.
You're in love with being in love.
Yes, I was in love with being in love. Soon after we got engaged, of course, my mind went to, okay, premarital counseling. Our pastor's going to marry us. I was already getting things in a row. And I started to see a different side. What do we need premarital counseling for? We're fine. Now, I didn't see the signs then. Looking back on it, that should have been a sign to me, he doesn't want to talk about his past and who he is. Again, I was 24, naive. I was just in love. Right. So those things didn't make sense to me. They did to my parents, they did to my friends, and they did to everyone else but me. And they mentioned to me multiple times, Heather, we see red flags. There's problems here. Take a little bit more time, because we were planning within 5 months being married.
Oh, wow.
So we're looking at met, engaged, and married within a year.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of things going on. Everything was very rushed. Again, looking back, I see why now. So fast forward, we're married. We decide, well, I say he, but we decided to start a business in Jamaica.
Oh, wow.
So on a whim, again, here we are. We're just moving around, and again, it's still the first year. So I'm just like in la la land.
Yeah.
again, there were
honeymoon phase.
Yeah, honeymoon phase. So many red flags. There was an instance where it was his birthday. Again, I never had celebrated a birthday with him. Show up at the bar that he was at after work, and he having a drink, and he basically looked at me and said, "What are we doing for my birthday?" And I said, "Whatever you want. You want to go out to eat? What's your favorite place?" That was a trigger, and it set him off. And he started screaming at me at the bar.
Goodness.
And he's like, "I can tell you what we're going to do for my birthday. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to get wasted, and you're going to watch me."
All righty.
And
Hey.
we just continued to be at the bar. I felt very uncomfortable. I didn't know what to do. I'm like, this is his first birthday. I don't even know what's going on. So I eventually told him after he was pretty wasted, I said, "I'm going to go home and you need to find your own way home." So I went out to the car, started the car up. He proceeded to follow me out there, got in the passenger seat, and started screaming at me for not doing anything for his birthday.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
As that conversation went on, it led him to flipping my seat back. He ended up being on top of me, screaming at me. Spit was flying in my face to the point where clearly the bartender knew something was up and came out to check on me. And I said, "I'm fine. Everything's fine." Because I didn't want her thinking anything. "Oh, no, we're fine. I can handle this. We're fine." She went back inside. He got off on being on top of me, got into the other seat, and then got so upset and angry that he punched my front windshield and it shattered.
Oh, my.
I could barely see out of my front windshield. And now I'm thinking, I am in the car with a crazy person. I just need to get home. I need to get somewhere safe. And he said, "You're not going anywhere without me." So we get in the car. I'm literally shaking to death. I'm really just driving wherever he tells me to drive. We end up picking up a homeless person because he felt like he wanted to help this person on the side of the road.
Okay.
Grabbed a stranger in the car, took them to the next truck station. We ended up all over town. Him telling me, "Go here, go there." Eventually we got home. So now I'm thinking, I have to go home. What are my parents going to think when they see this vehicle that is shattered in the front of the windshield? So what do? I lie. Because I don't want them to think that he's this terrible person, because he's lived up to this amazing fantasy of a man, and so.
Expectation.
Yeah. So what do? I lie. "Oh, I got behind one of those dump trucks, Dad, and one of the boulders came off and hit my windshield." I just came up with something. I didn't know if he believed it at the time or not. He never brought it up again. We got the windshield fixed. No problem. That was the beginning of all the problems, and then in moving to Jamaica, I ended up pregnant. I got really sick in Jamaica. I almost died, actually. I ended up in the hospital.
Goodness.
My baby was so far along that my body was taking care of the baby and not myself. So I was dying, but the baby was living.
Oh, wow.
My parents came down. They were going to fly a helicopter down to Jamaica. They had all these people pooling money to fly me back. But the doctors had said that if I go up in the air that I would die immediately because of the pressure.
Goodness.
So I stayed. Thank the Lord. He had my hand in all of it, because I ended up living. Isaac, my firstborn, was alive. We ended up leaving Jamaica. I never went back. But I mean, there's just so many stories, Joy and Beth. There's so many stories. There's so many instances. There's I'm driving on the road and he's screaming at me and he's yelling at me and he's hitting me as I'm trying to drive. I mean, there's just so many stories.
Yeah, it's the power struggle.
It is. It is. But then I just booked us a cruise and we're going to go for our anniversary. And there's the hope. There's the string. I love going on cruises, and he knows how to grab those strings. And we go on a cruise, and on the cruise we get into an argument because he's talking to a girl at the bar.
Oh, wow.
I get upset. I go back to the room. He comes back down. It's my fault.
Always.
It's always our fault. Grabs my phone, slams it against the wall. It breaks. I don't have a phone, but I'm supposed to be on this amazing trip that, is going to pull our marriage back together. And, I call my parents and say, it's another time. And, how can we help you get out of this, Heather? And then I think of ways that I can get out, and then one thing will happen that gives me hope, and I'll say, no, I'm going to stay. I want to stay.
Maybe have a baby.
Yeah. And, after the one baby, then there was another baby. Then there was another baby. There was no contraceptive because he didn't believe in contraceptive. So I was getting constantly pregnant after being pregnant after being pregnant. I feel now that was a reason why he kept me there, because he knew that I wouldn't leave because we had kids.
Control.
So again, there's
You
the
know.
kids that you were talking about.
Yeah, you don't. You think, okay, with my ex work, I mean, anything he did, he was good at, but it wasn't consistent.
Yeah.
For him, it was, today I'm going to be a carpenter and a roofer. Tomorrow I'm going to go do tile.
Sure.
He was great in construction. He could do anything, but nothing was ever consistent. And for me, I was the consistent breadwinner.
Yeah.
So, to go to the bank and deposit your paycheck and say, okay, I'm going to go buy groceries on, Saturday morning after getting paid on Friday. And you don't realize your bank account's been emptied out.
Sure.
Yeah, I ran in. That's how I found out with mine that there was a problem. Is I went to buy something and my check, this is checks again, they said insufficient funds. and I'm a saver, and all my money was gone. I went to the bank. I'm like, so that's when I addressed him. But for me, it was also, my first husband was sickly a lot. So he would use that because here I am leaving somebody who's sick, so he knew that.
Yeah.
So he would use sort of like a control thing, like we're talking about, that, how dare you leave me when I'm sick and I'm whatever. And yet he was spending all the money on drugs.
And you said finances. That was a big thing in mine as well, because when I met my ex, he was at a great job. And then when we went to Jamaica and came back, it was job hopping. And I watched our car be repoed from us. He had a motorcycle, so he was able to go around wherever he wanted to. And then I find myself with 4 children riding the bus every day, going to the store just to get out because, I felt trapped. I didn't have any friends. All my family is up in, Missouri. So I didn't have anyone here. He knew what he was doing when we moved here.
Very crafty.
Very, very crafty, very controlling. I'm going to keep you here. And you're not, he alienated me from my parents. I lost my relationship with them. Anytime that I did go visit, he would only give me a certain amount of time. When I came back, my family had bought me a phone because I didn't have a phone at the time. As soon as I got in the car and he found out I had a phone, he put the window down, chucked it out the window. I mean, very, very controlling.
Very abusive.
Very abusive.
Yeah, and I wanted to share a couple things that helped me in mine when we were going through the financial thing. Is I knew it was the Lord telling me certain things to do to protect myself. Because remember, safety. Granted, I didn't want to leave him, but I didn't want to lose everything I had, right? So I felt like God was telling me to get the house in my own name. I was the financial person he had to sign away, which he agreed. I got everything in my name, the cars, I got everything. So he couldn't sell it without me.
Yeah.
And so that was one thing. I got a P.O. box for my mail.
Yeah.
He could get to it if he wanted to, but he didn't pursue that because those times when credit cards are pre-approved credit cards, well, he'd open them all out and forge my name on them. So it was like, okay, I'm going to protect myself because there's also certain ways we need to protect ourselves, right?
Yes.
So those were some ways because of the financial abuse part of that. Yeah. And then when the money stopped, where I wasn't giving him money because he was, like I said, addicted to opiates. He was trying to buy them on the street and all that. That's when the abuse really got bad for me. It was one time in particular, I wouldn't give him any money. So he took my keys and I couldn't get out of the house, couldn't go to work, anything. It was like captive in my own house. And I couldn't call anybody because I didn't have the cell phones at the time with me. The phone was in the other room. And so I couldn't even call anybody for help. It was very, very scary.
It is.
And then another time he pushed me against the wall and put his arm under my neck as if he was going to choke me. And I'm like, okay, this isn't, I can't live like this. So somehow I got out and I ran and I don't know how I got my keys. I think it was God. And as I'm running out, he's running after me and I'm dragging him. he's got my door open and I'm just driving, and eventually he let loose. But I'd have to say that was very traumatic. I know people have had even more probably traumatic things, but it was not something I had thought I would live through.
Thank you for listening. For more information, visit www.suicideloss.org. That's suicideloss.org. This presentation was not intended as a substitute for professional care. Please see a counselor or physician for your individual needs. Subscribe and like so that you never miss an episode.